Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Matchat. We are brought to you by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike gear. They got the brand new Resolite mats up there at Fargo. Obviously brought to you by Resolite, the mat company, Pure and Clean Sports, and Jocko Fuels. We appreciate all those guys so much. I am joined by a person I always love talking to. I don't think I'm ever going to call him by his new title. He's always going to be coach to me. But the director of wrestling at Iowa State University, Kevin Dresser. Coach, thanks for coming on when I pinged you. I think there's a lot to talk about, and your opinion on this is going to be really good for people to be able to watch and listen.
Yeah, you know what? Once a coach, always a coach, right? So, no,
yeah,
David, I always enjoy talking to you.
Thank you. Yeah. My dad's 82 and people still walk up and call him coach. So I think, people earn that title, and it's a title that's meaningful to people. You've had a lot of influence and impact on people's lives, and coaches are really important, and it's not just the wins and losses. So I kind of want to talk about a lot of different things, but let's just start with the new role, director of wrestling. How did that come about? Let's just start with that. How did it come about?
I went to Jamie Pollard, our athletic director, in January, and I said, Jamie, I'll do one more year. I said, I'm out. I said, my contract goes till 29. But I said, I want to be done with the coaching. And I said, I'm coming to you now because I want you to consider hiring Coach Metcalf and Coach St. John. And I know that takes time. And so I want to be proactive. And he said he appreciated that. And he said, let's talk after the NCAA Championships. So fast forward a couple months, we get done with the NCAA Championships. He calls me down right away the week after the NCAA Championships and kind of unloads this plan that he's got with women's wrestling and wanting to hire Allie St. John, and a little bit of the challenges he had with just hiring her without opening it up. And then he was obviously he listened and took my, I guess, wisdom or advice to hire Coach Metcalf and Coach St. John and to kind of keep the train in the tracks and keep it rolling. But he said, hey, I need you to make the switch a year earlier. And so that's how everything kind of happened really fast in April. It was his idea. There was rumors that Iowa State was going to consider women's wrestling because they had dropped gymnastics in like late 2025. So there was room from a Title IX perspective and all that. So that's kind of how it all started, and it happened really, really fast. And, don't have necessarily any job description. There's no job description of being the director of wrestling. I'm just here to assist and bang ideas off of my brain and to be valuable whenever I can do. Before Allie got hired, people internally at Iowa State know this, but probably most people in the nation don't know, is that I hired Allie St. John before she was Allie St. John 2.5 years ago. So she's been working with me or working for me for the past 2.5 years. I put her in charge of our donor relations through the Cyclone RTC. So she was really involved in the fundraising efforts of the past 2.5 years of the Cyclone RTC, and donor relationships was her strength. So she was very well known in the wrestling circles in Iowa State. So the groundswell of I think everybody was excited that anytime you can get a program at a Division I level, a women's program, that's exciting. But then Allie was just such a familiar face. So, all of that kind of just happened really fast.
Yeah, there's a lot to even unpack in just that one story. But first of all, it's Iowa State, the ton of tradition. That's where my dad did his graduate work. That's why I originally went. It's, the robes and all that stuff. And, you brought the glory back to that program. And Allie was somebody that I knew from as an athlete. I think most of us did, but I knew her when she was in high school because she's from Southern Illinois, I believe, but at least wrestled in this tournament in Granite City, which is right across the river here. And, back then girls didn't wrestle boys, or it was super rare. And she beat the brakes off some kid. And I mean, I think that kid might have been in therapy for about 6 months. Like, because Allie wrestled hard. Like she wasn't just soft handsing people. Like she was a very physically strong athlete, even at an early age. And, you know, it's incredible. Like I'm doing this podcast with you from Fargo, and to see the growth of girls wrestling and women's wrestling on that side of it, and how many girls will be up here competing in Fargo. So that part's great. And then I got to talk to Allie when we were working on different tickets and things like that. And like when I would come up and do the media pass, like she's very polished. I think learning how to raise money is never a bad idea in anything in life. And we'll probably talk a little bit more about that later on, but knowing how to eat what you kill, knowing how to not be reliant on people, and knowing how to bring ROI to people is a great skill and a great thing. You mentioned making sure that Brent Metcalf moved from, I guess, first assistant to head coach, and St. John went from second to first. And then they brought in Maldonado, and then Chris Perry is still there. And then I'm guessing Villascusa is still there in some capacity as well.
Yep. Fernando. Yep.
And then Nate Carr, Sr. So the staff there, it feels like besides Maldonado, there's a ton of continuity. The recruiting looks like it's gone really well. You guys wrestled amazing during the season last year. Just really got kind of crushed by the injury bug at the end of the year with, you know, several guys, but like Rocky and Vinny are guys that have wrestled in Border Brawl and have Missouri roots. And, you know, but I remember us talking at the beginning of the year after you beat Iowa, at Iowa State in the duel, and then winning CKLV and all these other things. What did this past season kind of teach you about, you know, injuries are kind of unavoidable and sometimes, and some people just, it happens, but like what lessons, I feel like every year, as old as we get, we still learn a lesson. What did you take away from last season?
Well, it was an up and down season. You know, you get to the Big 12 tournament and just about everything that could go right went right. You know, we were healthy all year long, a few dings now and then, but nothing that kept anybody off the mat for more than a week or so. And then you literally get to the last day of the Big 12 tournament, and you know, Vinny was a little bit dinged up, but especially Isaac Dean at 184 blows out his ACL, you know, and we knew that was pretty bad injury because he'd never really had any problems all year long. And then, you know, with 30 seconds to go in the finals, Rocky Elam tears everything, you know, ACL, calf strain, hamstring strain, MCL. I mean, his knees, there's nothing left. So, you know, we MRI'd that a couple days after the Big 12, and we were hoping, and we were kind of optimistic that he might have just popped something, because he came to the corner in that video review with 20 seconds to go and said, "Hey, my knee popped." Like he, you know, but at that particular time, you got so much adrenaline going through you, and we knew that he'd wake up Sunday morning pretty sore, and he did. You know, so you try to just do all you can do to get by, but you know, there's physical barriers, and you know, as tough as Rocky Elam is, you can't wrestle on one leg at the NCAA tournament. He was literally trying to wrestle on one leg. So, you know, you feel like you're, you know, that far away from a trophy, and, you know, it kind of all gets taken away from you in about an hour at the Big 12 tournament between two guys, you know, because, you know, there's no question Rocky Elam would have scored 16 to 20 points at the NCAA tournament. All of a sudden you go from 8th to 3rd really quick. But that's sports, you know, and there's a lot of teams out there followed Iowa State basketball this year. We were kicking butt, taking names, and Joshua Jefferson, our stud, goes down in the Big 12 basketball tournament, and we get to the first round of the NCAA basketball tournament, and we have a good team. And you know, the impact of just taking one stud out of the lineup, boom, your basketball team's, you know, a mere shell of itself. So you got to have those horses when you get down to the end. And you know, I think we saw when we wrestled early in the year, we really had some good guys. You know, these guys dominated Vegas. You know, they beat a good Iowa team. They competed really close with Oklahoma State. So that's just sports.
Yeah, and You're right. Like, it's funny. I talk to a lot of dads now, and when well, how'd your son do? And they start with a conversation like, well, they didn't win, because if you won, you just say I won. And then the second part of that, there's always this explanation like, well, usually it's like they got a bad call. And it's crazy. I've never talked to anybody that won that ever got a good call.
Right.
Like nobody ever just goes, man, like I was wrestling dresser and he was killing me, and it had me in a crab ride, and they called him defensive pin, and it was the craziest thing I've ever seen. They're like, no, I held him there. Like it's all these sort of lies and things. But injuries are real. And it's, like I know Rocky, and I got to coach Vinny, so I'm fairly close to him. And it I have to be, I always joke I'm Japanese Switzerland. Like I just have to not react. But when certain kids, it's hard to watch, because how hard everybody works at that level. But I think those guys, I know them, and I know they were living the right lifestyle and doing things the right way. And so to see it, I think if you lose, you can kind of live with it. When it kind of just gets taken, like Rocky technically lost, but nobody wins, like you said, with one leg. So
Right.
Yeah. I asked my dad this a while back, and I wanted to ask you, now that you're officially not coaching, like in a corner, what's a memory or two or seven that will stick with you think, like for the rest of your life? And I mean, go all the way back to high school. I'm just curious, like you've seen everything, you've done pretty much everything, Iowa State, Virginia Tech, Iowa, back in high school, like so many things. Like what's one or two things that will stick out to you?
Oh, that's a good question. Coached high school for 18 years, coached college for 20. Was at Grundy for 8 years, was at Christiansburg for 10 years, was at Virginia Tech for 11 years, and was at Iowa State for 9 years. So there's, 8 to 11 is the magic number for Coach Dresser's level of interest, or not interest, I should say, but
you get the approximate 10-year itch. Yeah.
Yeah, 10-year itch. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So, I think watching young kids win their first state title was always a really enjoyable thing for me, because we talked about it every day in practice. With both teams at Grundy and Christiansburg, it's like, okay, you're that ninth grader sitting over on the wall, first week of practice. We're here to win a state title. Like, let's just cut to the chase. Like, you're not leaving this program till you win a state title. And so you set the bar really high right away. And then those kids achieve those goals. So that first state title is always something. And then the other thing that's super emotional, might be one of the most emotional things in the NCAA tournament, is the blood round on Friday night. It's just so emotional to see those kids that, get on the podium for the first time. It would be a cool thing. And I'm sure people do document it video wise, but if you were to document the emotion in the tunnel of that kid running from the main floor of the venue into that tunnel, when all of his teammates and all of his, support staff are all waiting in the tunnel, that's pretty cool. That's two things, and I've been, blessed to be in the corner for national championships, for state championships, for, 40 some All-Americans. That's always cool. But, just getting to I always say, I always had the best seat in the house. I had the best ticket in the house. And as I got older, I kind of started trying to calm myself down and not be so nervous or eat up with anxiety, and just go, come on, Dresser, you just got the best seat in the house, dude. So just sit there and enjoy it, and quit trying to control what you can't control, because you got them this far. You send them out there, sit there and watch that match and enjoy. And I think as I got older, I think I did that. That was a way for me to manage, I don't know about the stress, the pressure, whatever I was feeling, was just to realize, all right, damn, you got a good seat, buddy. Shut up, sit down and watch.
Grab the brick and I'll tell you when to throw it. Yeah.
I wasn't very good at throwing bricks either. So
yeah, I've been lucky enough with the different things I've done in my life to be down on the floor and do some of those interviews. And so I knew your answer would be interesting because you've done everything. And the state, I'm going to go back to the state title one, but maybe for people that wrestled but weren't good enough, or and weren't like me, have access to it. I've seen a couple of those celebrations, and it makes you want to cry as the observer. Like some guy from Lock Haven is an All-American, and I don't know that kid, but just it all pours out. Like, is there a way to paint a picture for maybe people that haven't seen it, so they can understand it a little better?
I don't know what you can. You get like I got a daughter that's going to get married. My oldest daughter's getting married in September in Outer Banks, North Carolina, and I'm sure I'll be a train wreck. My wife's already saying, it's okay. You're a wrestler. You're a tough guy. It's okay to cry. And I said, don't worry, I'll cry. I'll get emotional. And for me, there's been many tears that I've shed, happy tears in that tunnel.
Yeah. I think that maybe that's the best way to say it, because people see coaches like yourself that are, I'll use an old movie reference, are Cool Hand Luke, and people don't, and you have to be, right? Like you're the emotional leader of the program, and people see it too high or too low, they either consciously or subconsciously feed off of that. I know from my dad, and how much I love and respect him. Like we had a kid one year that placed in junior college nationals. He never placed in high school in class 2 in Missouri, which is almost mathematically impossible if you're any good. And he took 7th in a weight class that had 8 returning All-Americans. And yeah, and just, like he ended up doing well afterwards, but like for the rest of his life, he's an All-American, and those are magical moments. And those are the reasons, I guess, at the top why people will call you coach for the rest of your life, because you helped them accomplish that, accomplish that task. And, wrestling, you keep score, like it's, like a lot of things in life, you're trying to create win-wins, and, everybody benefits. And if we go shake hands and scrap for 6 or 7 minutes, depending on which sport we're doing, one of us doesn't get our hand raised. That's just the nature of it. So,
well, I think it's just so hard too. I think people don't realize how hard it is to be an All-American. You talk about elite, and I like to use the word elite. You have just put yourself in really elite company. I mean, you think about it, there's, 350,000 high school wrestlers a year. And that funnels all the way into 80 guys being an All-American each year. So if you're a high school kid, you take 80 divided by 350,000. I don't know what that number is, but it's a 0.000 something.
Yeah.
So you're an elite company to get that done. And so those guys all know what's on the line in that round. They all know what's on the line.
Yeah.
Just try to go high. Try to be. I'm cool, and my cool hand Luke is I go back. There's a lot of places to dart into, and drapes and curtains, and so I just go back there and cry for 20 seconds, and then I'm good to go, and I'm back to the next one. So
there's a lot of nooks and crannies in those arenas, if and if the coaches are good at finding them. I know the one year it was interesting to me that I don't know how long ago it was, but you guys all started setting up like air mattresses and things down there. And I mean, it looked like a really high level homeless shelter.
That's a great way to put it. If people, they should take a camera and go back there, because it looks like everybody sets up their own little camping area.
Yeah.
And you got 78 teams there, and they all got their camps. They're all similar, but they're all a little different.
Yeah. The first year it was shocking to me. I've been lucky enough to kind of see stuff behind the scenes, and I'm like, what is, I thought employees were sleeping there overnight when I first saw it. So clearly, first impression, I was wrong. So what do you think you'll miss about, whether it's just going to practice every day? Like, I don't want to shade your answer, but I know what I miss. But what do you think you'll miss?
Well, obviously, you know, my contract actually goes, I've got a full-time contract till June 30th of 27. And then I've worked a deal where I'm going to be around till June 30th of 2029. So I'm going to be fortunate and lucky enough to be around, to travel, to go to competitions, to be in the room. I mean, I could go over to practice today. I don't have to, but I can go over to practice today at 3:00. So I think all of those things I still have access to. I think probably when it hits you the most is when you don't have, I'm guessing is when you don't have the keys to the athletic department, you don't have the dealer car and all the things that come along with being a Division I coach. And then, you know, for me right now, I don't sense that not being in the corner is going to be that big of a deal to me. I'm excited to see what these guys can do. I'm excited to kind of be a cheerleader and a fan, and maybe play a different role with the athletes where they can come to me, where before, you know, I kind of have a reputation of being a hard ass, and I don't like guys that cut corners. And when I see them cut corners, I don't bite my tongue. You know, I challenge them on it. I remind them that if you want to, don't tell me you want to be an All-American. Show me you want to be an All-American. Don't tell me you want to be a national champ. Show me you want to be a national champ. And when you're showing me, when you're showing me everything that you're doing is the opposite of being a national champ or being an All-American, then I'm going to call you out on it. Those days are gone for me. I get to go be good cop for a while.
Yeah.
I'm going to be
That's
good
exactly what the term I was thinking. Yeah.
So I get to be good cop and, pat them on the butt, say, man, go have some fun. You're a stud. You're unbelievable. Not that I didn't do that. I was very good at giving credit where credit was due, but I was also reminding them like, hey, it's just hard to be wrestling on Friday night and Saturday, really hard. So all the little things you do all week long, all the choices you make either assist you to get where you want to be or derail you. Whether right or wrong, that was my style.
Yeah, I think you kind of go from having to be the disciplinarian to like the cool uncle energy,
Perfect example.
And you have so much credibility that like somebody that has done what you've done that gets to put your arm around a guy and go, hey, if you just clean up this one area of your life, you can do it. And it's you've coached forever. You know how it is. Like one person will tell you, like you'll be telling me all week, David, you have to do the move this way, and I don't listen. And then you bring in some clinician and the guy teaches it exactly the same way you did. And I'm like, coach, I should be. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah. So like, I think you'll be that awesome little salt and pepper that finish the meal off and help these guys get over the hump, and the women too, I'm sure, but help these athletes get over the hump mentally or physically. And it's interesting. Everybody's so good now at an early age. I think technique and stuff obviously still matters, but it used to be at college, like that's where you went to get technique because, the high school coaches were also the football coach and now there's so much specialization that, yeah, it's interesting. Like I miss sitting on the wall and joking with the guys before practice, and you'll still get to do that. And I miss, like you said, like when the kids accomplish their goal, like that moment, like like I got to sit in a corner of a kid who's number one. Like I'm not his coach. I was like the brick guy, and so when he wins, he wins, he loses, like he wins or he loses. It wasn't me, but I miss, and I don't know if this is legal now, I miss sitting in the sauna with guys. Like I miss just talking to them and it being tough and going through it with them. Those are like some of my best memories that I think most people would not think. So, so for those of us watching on the outside, tell us a little bit about the women's program. Grant Turner's on our other podcast and he's an Iowa State guy. And we knew about the gymnastics thing. And so like we knew the Title IX thing. We knew maybe facility wise and stuff like that. It all worked out. But we're watching the recruiting and it reminds me a little bit of when Clarissa Chun got the job at Iowa. Like it's a major splash. You have theoretically all your funding available right away. I'm sure you guys are parceling that out, not just recruiting a gazillion kids year one, but it feels like the energy and aims right now tied to women's wrestling has got to be just through the roof right now in terms of excitement. And she's obviously getting a ton of studs, to commit to Iowa State.
No, it's a really a buzz, and Allie and her staff have done a great job already. Allie's got endless energy, and she's bringing in, probably turning away. She's at the point now where she's turning away more girls than she's signing, and it seems like every time I pick up my phone, we got another one coming to Iowa State. So we're going to try to do some exhibition / open tournament possibly, things where, even though we're not going to have a competitive season next year, we're going to wait till the following year. We're still going to have girls that are going to get out there. I think it's probably going to land on about 15 or 16 girls on the roster, which all of them will redshirt probably, or, now with this 5-for-5, how that plays out, we're not quite sure, but she's going to have probably 15 or 16 girls in the roster this first year, and then she'll get to go up to the cap of 30, after that. So I know she's got a bunch of verbals out of girls that are just graduated their junior year and getting ready to be seniors. So they'll fill in some holes, and I'm sure she's holding a few when the portal opens next year. I'm sure that, the girls will play the portal game too. So there's just a lot of buzz. And, this, again, going back to Allie kind of having an inside track on the fan base because she worked on the men's side for 2.5 years. You're going to get a lot of these people that are Allie St. John fans. They're going to show up and all of a sudden become Iowa State women's wrestling fans. So I think we're going to have really good crowds right away. We're trying to figure out ways to combine some dual meets. So if people come down, they get to catch the men and the women back to back. So we're trying to get some creative ways to maximize her product, and it'll be a good product. I mean, she'll be competitive to win. She'll be competitive to win the NCAA Championships her first trip there.
Yeah, you can sense that. GT Grant told me, Jake Cadle, came over and had worked with Allie in the past, and like a lot of those kids are coming over from William Penn, but also like he's got coaching experience, and it feels like, I think a lot of people say we're going to do this and then just don't ever support it. It kind of feels like Fresno State wrestling, they did it, but they didn't really do it. And it feels like Iowa State women's wrestling is dollars and resources and people and energy and ideas are actually really being committed to this process. Is that your perception?
Yeah, and we're just in the early phases of not even a major, but a kind of a minor renovation in their facility. But when it's done, when it kind of gets all done, most of it'll be done by the time we get into November, December. There's a back order on mats right now, so the mats that she's wants won't get in until the spring, but everything else will be in, and it'll be, in fact, we're probably going to have the men wanting to be over in that facility more than their facility, because we have a great facility, but I think Allie's facility is going to be incredible. It looks like the drawings and the stuff that we're seeing initially when they get that done, and they're in the process of doing it right now. So we didn't waste any time in terms of a renovation.
I'm so old, Coach. When we practiced there, it was at Bayer Hall.
Well, that's where she's at.
Oh, they're renovating. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, when I was a kid back then, it wasn't Fargo. The junior nationals were in Iowa City and Cedar Falls, but that's where we had our training camp in the Iowa State wrestling room in the second floor Bayer. She's on the first floor Bayer in renovating the gymnastics side of things. So she's got a big open room. I think she's going to end up eventually having 6 mats in there once it's all said and done. So think about that.
Yeah, that's a full commitment. That's not a pat on the top of the head and say, go get them, Sparky. We're here to help you win. So you mentioned portal and some things like that, and you're probably the most transparent, forthright coach I talk to about the financial side of things. And I think you know me well enough to know I'm a finance guy. Like that's, what I've done most of my life. I felt like there was a complete hypocrisy from the NCAA and they're really only thinking about football and basketball, but obviously it trickles down to wrestling, when they were like, hey, we're going to review every NIL deal. We're going to deal with AI. And it feels to me like this is just pay for play. Like I don't see people doing, car dealership commercials. I don't see people on billboards. I don't even see people pretending now. Like you originally thought, well, they're at least going to pretend, that like we're going to give this car dealer $500,000 or 100,000 or $20. I don't care. And then they're going to do an ad with our money, with some of it. And then they're going to pay the kid the rest. And now it's just like people are just getting checks. And I'm a capitalist. So I feel like I'm a hypocrite, because if you're a capitalist, you should want everybody to make whenever they can. The market will tell you what you're worth. But I guess my question is NIL is it basically pay for play in your mind? And do you think that just NIL alone, is it going to it feels to me like we're eventually going to have this caste system of haves and have-nots. And you see it now where a school develops a kid who's an All-American, they immediately go in the portal and leave. So like now that you're sort of a step away from it, I guess is maybe a good way to say it. What are your thoughts on NIL?
Well, that's a lot to unpack. I mean, there's a lot of thoughts and a lot of, I think, moving parts that keep moving. It's never the same strategy or, the way the NCAA or your compliance, if people look at it, has changed 3 or 4 times since it started in our world. You can do this, you can't do this. Now you can do this, and next year you can't do it again. And it's been a moving target. The one thing I'll say about, so you have 2 buckets that are paying athletes. You have the rev share bucket, which very few wrestling programs got any type of significant rev share bucket. We were fortunate that RAD carved out $1 million for Iowa State. So we've got $1 million of rev share. There's no problem with rev share. Is easy to figure out. You can give the money to whoever the hell you want to give the money to. If you want to give $1 million to one kid, you can give $1 million to one kid. If you want to give $100,000 to 10 kids, now every wrestling program has a different. I think most of them probably have 0, but there's probably 10, 12 programs out there at least that I'm hearing. And this isn't published anywhere, it's all hearsay, that have NIL rev share, that have rev share. Rev share is internal money from your athletic department. So basically, we'll have a bunch of guys next year that'll be getting money directly from Iowa State, probably Venmo'd right into their checking account, for 10 months. That's
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how rev share works. Now, NIL, that's third-party money outside of the rev share cap. That's the Wild West still. That is, so you got rev share, which is, all you kind of in its own little area, and it seems to be, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it seems to be working well because everybody's got a cap. I think next year Iowa State gets $22.5 million. Just every college does. That's your cap that you can use in your athletic department. It was 21 this year. It's going to go up to 22.5, I think, or close to 22.5. So Iowa State, and then the athletic director each athletic director decides what to do with that 22.5, right? They have to raise it. The athletic department has to raise it 22.5. And all of them are doing it different ways. But at the end of the day, you got $22.5 million of money going out to your athletes at that university. The AD decides where it goes, and so I don't know what other programs are getting, but I do have heard 10 or 12 others. NIL money's money outside that you got with your donors, with, everything from car dealers to, wrestling camps to, RTC has deals with our kids. Those deals all have to be submitted to NIL Go and basically Deloitte. NIL Go's hired Deloitte, and Deloitte looks at them, and they either go yay or nay. So we've had some turned down, and we've had a lot of them accepted. They're usually pretty good at getting back to you. And the big number ones are getting turned down unless you've got a crazy, crazy high social media following, or you're a stud, or both. The NIL.
What do you mean by if you're a stud? Like,
obviously, if you look at it from a dollars and cents standpoint, if you got a blue chip guy, if Jack Force is a high school senior or freshman or wherever he is, his value, he's going to get more. They're going to look at him as much more of a value from a consumer standpoint as a kid that's a walk-on of the same weight class, the same caliber. So which guy brings more? If you're a business out there and you want to write up, just use $100,000 deal. Well, you're a walk-on kid. There's no way NIL Go is going to look at, yeah, this kid, he ain't worth $100,000, right? But you get a guy that's got a big social media presence. He's accomplished a lot. A lot of people follow him. A lot of eyes are on him. Now, if Jack Forrest decides he's going to go sell flip-flops, he's going to sell a lot more flip-flops than the kid that ain't, that doesn't, you know what I'm saying, that doesn't have a name, doesn't have the name, image, and likeness. And that's where this all started from, as a Jack Forrest, right? I'm not picking on Jack. He's a stud. I'm just,
No, but he's a memorable name, and the story coming out of high school midseason is unique. Yeah. So,
but the thing where I think the rub is, and I think this is where not just wrestling coaches, but coaches are scratching their head at is, well, what happens if you don't submit the contract and you pay the kid?
Well, that's kind of
then they can't tell you no if you don't submit it, and they can't tell you that that's too much and you need to, we're only going to approve 50,000 instead of 100,000, because when you get turned down, you got two choices. Most people, when you send the NIL contract in, it doesn't fly with NIL Go and they reject it, then you got to come back and you either got to put more deliverables on that contract. So that means they got to do 25 more social media posts and 5 more appearances. And now we're going to submit it. All right. Or else you're going to lower the dollar amount. Common sense. Right.
Well, there's a third option.
If you don't submit it and you pay the kid, it's obviously illegal, but what happens if nobody's policing it? What happens if there's nobody checking it out?
Your story, your explanation is so good, because like you submit this, for me, because I'm a couple years younger than you, and they go, well, no, like we want to give him 250 and he's only worth 100. So either you do more deliverables and they approve 250, you talk me into just taking 100, or you pay me the 100 and pay me the other 150 in poker chips or whatever the case may be. And people have been, I always tell people this has been going on forever. The cockroaches are finally just coming out from underneath the couch. I remember there was a football team. They have a wrestling team, so I'm not going to say it, but like their guys are on the cover of Sports Illustrated in prison suits for taking money illegally, and I don't think they should have gone to prison for something that's legal now, but that was the case. Like, the thing that maybe you can help shed some light on this, like kids are being recruited and they're saying, well, we'll be able to give you $1 million. Okay. Well, I don't know how you can help me understand how you can tell a kid that ahead of time.
Well, you can only tell a kid that if it's rev share money. You can provide a kid a contract and show them a rev share. Like we can show a kid, all right, here's how much you're going to get paid at Iowa State through Iowa State's rev share plan, right? But anything outside of that, if they've got a car dealer out there, let's just say, car dealers get picked on the most, but and that car dealer says, hey, I'm going to pay you this. Well, if the car dealer's got a contract with the kid, then that contract is supposed to go through, NIL Go. Kid's supposed to submit it in order to get paid, because now what happens is it ruins the rev share cap of that university. Technically should go up, and now that university's in trouble because they're 22.5. So there's got to be some transparency there in terms of how these third-party deals are structured and how they're policed, and that's kind of where that's really what people are scratching their head on right now. Is there's all kinds of rumors out there. You don't know if they're true, but you're hearing, okay, this kid, these 5 kids at this school are getting this money, and there's no way that they're supposed to get this money, and how they doing it, and if they're doing it illegally, is anybody checking up on them? I mean, how do you check up on a kid? You hear that 5 kids are getting this amount of money. How do you check up on them? I haven't heard of one case yet in 3 years. They're investigating tampering like crazy. They're investigating, probably that's the number one thing they're investigating. But I haven't heard of one case or one incident where they're out there checking if kids actually have a contract with the money that showed up in their checking account. Like, you can track money pretty quickly. But I haven't heard of one case where, all right, the NCAA really wants to know, did this kid really get paid? Like, and because there's no contract out here, nothing was submitted to NIL Go. And I'm not just talking about wrestling. I think that's the rub in a lot of sports is these kids are just getting these, getting these deals, and there's nothing out there to track it paperwork wise.
Yeah, I mean, like I saw a football player didn't go because he was promised all this money and then they didn't deliver. I think, like, I remember several years ago, I somehow ended up in this meeting where USA Wrestling said that that RTCs could not pay for room and board for college eligible athletes. Like an RTC could, but like I'll use one of your athletes, like David Carr has no more eligibility. Your RTC is allowed to pay for his housing. Like, at least back then, that was the ruling. But USA Wrestling unilaterally said, schools are using this for recruiting because they'll recruit an RTC eligible athlete instead of it coming out of, which is an archaic term, the 9.9 that no longer exists. But instead of them having to pay for it out of that, they can pay for it out of RTC money. And then most people can figure out, well, that actually creates more scholarships. Your 9.9 gets stretched more. And I went to dinner with the coach and like, this is awesome. And I'm like, nothing's changing. Like, why? I'm like, well, first of all, you have to prove they're doing it. Second of all, you have to turn them in. And the third thing is you better make sure your backyard is clean, and none of y'all's backyards are clean. Yeah. Like, y'all doing something a little bit wrong. Like, some people's wrong is different than the other person, but you're all doing enough if they look back at you. It's like everybody's counting cards, so nobody's turning anybody in.
No, and that's what it's evolved into. You're right, is just the whole, I mean, look at how many kids, it always blows my mind that how many kids go in the transfer portal as a do not contact. Right? Yeah. Every time a kid goes in the transfer portal as a do not contact, you don't think somebody's been reaching out to that kid? And I know the head guy at the NCAA is trying to really minimize and I think revamp what is the definition of tampering right now. I know there's legislation out there, and he's just basically saying, hey, we really got to look at this because the evidence is there. I don't know a percentage, but I'm going to guess 33%, a third of the kids that get in the portal go in as a do not contact. Well, come on, right? And there's somebody that's kid just didn't all of a sudden decide, I want to come here and knows nothing about the program. I mean, it doesn't make any sense if you have a portal to not have a discovery phase of that process, because I want to know as a coach, like, what kind of kid is this kid? I know he was on the podium, but what kind of kid is he? Does he have a reputation? What's his teammates think about him? What's he like in the community? What's his social media look like? And you can learn a lot by calling kids club coaches.
Yes.
A lot by even calling their former coach. I've had college coaches call me about my guys this year. Like, hey, what's Adrian Meza like? He's a great kid, Yeah. I like that kind of transparency. That's what we need. There needs to be a discovery phase, and everybody needs to quit worrying so much about, that part of it. And I understand there's got to be a compliance factor on the other side too, where you're just not out poaching guys. But the haves and the have-nots, whether we like it or not, when they put in this portal system and then they coupled it with NIL, they created the haves and the have-nots even more. And so that's always going to be the case.
Yeah. I spoke to Nate Engel, who used to be at Oregon State, and he told me the year when Oregon State went like 4 for 4 in the blood rounds. They had all these guys wrestling on Saturday morning. I'm walking around on the floor, and I know Nate since he was in Missouri Valley. So I said, man, heck of a round last night. And he goes, these dudes are already getting called. And I'm like, what? I'm sorry?
True story.
Yeah. And I didn't know what he meant. I didn't know what he meant because it's just, I didn't have context. And he said, like, these guys, these donors are already calling saying you should go in the portal. I know how much you would get.
Yeah.
And the other one is I had a guy call me and say they signed a kid. This is your do not contact. They signed a kid that lost in the blood round at the tournament. Like, they just took him to a hotel room and signed him. I mean, I heard it straight from the guy that did the deal. And I was like, I go, are you drunk right now? He goes, a little bit. I'm like, hang up. I don't want to know this, like, I'm not going to say anything, but I actually have a forum where I could put this out there. So, yeah, I mean, NIL is a can of worms. I want to talk to you about 5 for 5, and I want to talk to you about a rumor I heard about what you're working on next. Your thoughts on 5 for 5, and I guess originally, like as somebody that was an active coach last year, were you guys getting updates, data, whatever, saying, hey, this is probably coming down the pipe, it's not, that kind of thing? What was the communication like, and what are your thoughts on it now?
Sometimes with the NCAA, ideas just pop up and all of a sudden they happen really quickly. And then other times there's been, issues or proposals out there that have been floating around for 20 years, and they're still not happening. This was one of those that came up fast and they made it a rule fast. So there wasn't a lot of discussion. I think maybe I heard about it maybe in late 25, and, here it is already a rule in June. So, there was obviously a lot of discussion in Indianapolis about it, and I'm sure they reached out to a lot of the people on those committees. But I think it's a good rule. I think it takes some of the heat off compliance from going back and trying to find all this medical, and the trainers trying to find all this medical evidence out there, getting kids. The NCAA started for whatever reason. It used to be tough to get a medical red shirt. In the last 10 years, they hand them out like hotcakes. So that's why you got all these 7th and 8th year guys out here, because they crack a toenail and they get a red shirt for it, medical red shirt, when they can't make the team. That's all going to stop now. And so I think it's a good rule.
Yeah. And I mean, there was one athlete that took an Olympic red shirt because he had qualified, never even went to the Olympic trials. And it felt like the system was being gamed, and I think all of us that competed or coached, like you coach right up to the line, right? Like you watch international wrestling, there's no injury time. So if you're tired, you just say you grab an ankle, you get the cold spray, and it's like, I think we're all watching World Cup a little bit right now, especially till the US got knocked out. And these guys, every time they go down, it's like they're never going to walk again. But then if their team scores 30 seconds later, they're jumping up, it's like
it's different culture.
Yeah.
Culture.
Yeah, there's a lot of manipulation of stuff that's going on. So to me, from the outside, 5 for 5 seems like it just clarifies, right? Like, I mean, when we were doing rankings, we're like, okay, how many years does Dresser have left? And, it's like, you stop just saying he's a junior or senior, like, hey, he's eligible this year. That's all we're ranking, And the problem was, like, when the nationals are over, I would immediately go through the bracket and delete all the seniors. And then, like the round of 12 guys, you have to make a judgment call on. I usually go off the NCAA seeds, so if they were seeded 9, 10, 11, 12, I would rank them in that order. But some of these kids are like, I don't know. I don't know if they're back or not. And, unless doing this stuff is your full-time 24/7 job, it's almost impossible to keep track of. And then you stack that with, like, Little Rock wrestled a kid all year that was ineligible, and the guys at Flow Wrestling on the podcast unintentionally outed him. And you're like, what is going on? Like, there's just a lot to process. And I think the exceptions for military service, mission, and pregnancy are good ones. I mean, obviously, men would, 2 of those would apply, but, a mission is a pretty easy thing to document, and you're not going to just go do that to try to get years. Military service, like I'm friends with Randy Couture, and he would, he started college like at 24,
yeah,
but he still would have qualified. I guess he wouldn't with 5 for 5 because of the age. I don't know. I guess the military service, I guess we can talk about that another time, but that'll be interesting with the age cap and everything else. So when I called you to do this, I talked to a couple of other people, and they said you're doing some things now or will be either concurrently with your job here or afterwards. About a lot of people say they want to grow wrestling, and then they're basically just doing a camp and want to get paid. I think what I heard is much different than that. So I don't want to say what I've heard and in any way goof it up. Can you tell me a little bit about this next step or stage in your life?
What you're talking about is, so I'm I guess in the process of putting together kind of a platform to get my face out there and do some consulting. And so what I'm kind of trying to figure out now is, do I want to consult, do I want to consult high school staffs, college staffs in terms of how to build programs? That's the one thing that I get a ton of, obviously, just because everybody's coaching path is different. My coaching path, like we talked about at the beginning, was 8 years here and then 10 and then 11 and then 9. And really 3 of those programs were builds. The first program I went to was, really elite. If you back up, I had a period of time so I went into, Iowa City as a freshman in college way back in 1981 and left in 1988. So the 5 years that I was an athlete for Coach Gable, we won 5 national championships. It was sewed up every year by the time we went to bed on Friday night. It was that dominating of a situation.
Wow.
Kind of what you're seeing. I always kid around. I got 5 rings, for 5 years that I was at Iowa, 5 national championship rings. And it was just a really dominating time. And so as a kid from a small town in Iowa coming to the University of Iowa, obviously it was extremely competitive and extremely difficult. But what I didn't realize was just how elite it was. I probably was naive, I was naive in thinking that every college wrestling room in America was like Coach Gable's wrestling room. And that wasn't true. The expectation and the competitiveness, it was just really an elite environment. And so you grow up and you kind of cut your teeth as a 18 to 20. I was there till I was 25. So you get to experience 5 years of it as an athlete and 2 years of it as a coach. So you're there 7 years and you're just in this elite environment. And again, you don't even know until you leave how elite it is. And then my first job, I left and went to a high school called Grundy, Virginia, and they'd already won 2 state titles. And then I was there 8 years and we won 8 more. And it wasn't I wasn't super coached by any stretch of the imagination. I walked into the most elite high school situation that you could ever imagine. They paid me a ton of money to coach wrestling. I had 300 plus kids in my youth club. We had access to planes, trains, automobiles. We had an unlimited budget. They had put together one of the best to this day little league systems for getting kids out for wrestling and exposing kids for wrestling to the sport of wrestling. This is in rural Appalachia. So I was there for 8 years. So you take 7 plus 8, 7 years in Iowa City plus 8 in Grundy. So I was in 15 years of like the most elite high school and college wrestling programs. So when I got ready to go do Christiansburg and Virginia Tech and Iowa State, I had a really good background. Like when I went into Christiansburg, and I'm not saying this to be arrogant, it wasn't like, all right, I'm going to go see if we can, I'm going to see if I can go win some titles. I'm like, we're winning, we're going to go win. And even when I got to Virginia Tech, we got 81st in the nation, and then we got 79th in the nation. But I knew over time, if we plugged in the right principles and the right concepts and the right mentality and the right people, that we were, that wasn't probably going to guarantee us a national championship, but I knew we could be a top 10 team and a consistent top 10 team. And then again, the same thing at Iowa State. So what I'm saying in all that rambling is I would love to, that's the one thing I get the most emails and phone calls consistently, like every 2 weeks of my life. So I want to put together a platform that can answer some of those questions and work. I'm kind of excited to work with coaches outside of the sport of wrestling. Not that I wouldn't be interested in working with some wrestling programs, but I'd love to get to know what the football, the basketball, and the other, some non-revenue sports, either high school or college. So that's probably what you heard, is that I'm doing some testimonials with some of my former athletes and some peer coaches and some of my former administrators, kind of building a website and a platform so people want to check out Coach Dresser and what hopefully wisdom. And again, this is just what worked for me. This is what worked for me. I'm not saying it's gospel. I've got a lot of confidence in the systems and the principles. And I think that elite people aren't elite just because they got lucky. I think you're elite because you got put in, and I'm blessed that I was put in some really elite environments. Really for a 15-year period, I was around some really, really elite people. And so I think you learn I think you learn excellence. So that's kind of what I'm doing. That's going to be my like fun project where I can go out. I like going out and speaking because I talk a lot, but I'm also
Good at it.
I'm doing some corporate, like I'm going to go speak at Ford convention down in Chattanooga at the end of the month, where I'm going to speak to like 80 car salesmen, which a lot of people laugh out there because I've been accused of being a car salesman once or twice. But I'm going to go speak at their annual thing and just talk about, being successful and giving them principles that work for me. And I think, what I've learned is the corporate world likes hearing about the athletic world. And so I'm excited to do that. I'm in the process. It's just something I can peck away at every day that doesn't cut into this other job that will give me something to do when I'm old and gray or older and grayer.
The humility at the end is nice, but I think I said this to you when I pinged you about coming on, and we're just talking off air, but I believe this. You may be the best coach of this generation at leaving places better than you found them. And most high school coaches don't go coach college. That just, it's like you somehow have to get in the college game and then stay there and work your way around, being an assistant at a non-elite school, an assistant at an elite school, and then a head coach at a non-elite school and work your way up. And for you to have the path you did, when you're doing these public speaking things, the immediate thing people look at is your resume before they even decide if they're going to go. Like, was this guy actually done anything I haven't done? Because why would I listen to him otherwise, right? And to have won at every level, at an incredible rate is a ton of credibility. And then there's other things like, I know a lot of coaches that are good people. They don't know how to run it like a business. They don't know how to fundraise. They don't really know how to talk to that person that would donate $10,000 to their program. Like, they don't know how to ask the right way. They don't know how to make that person feel good about it. They don't even know how to mention it's tax deductible. They don't know how to help them create ROI. Like, what does that person want? Like, some people just want their name in the program. Other people just want to go to dinner with the coach. Some people just want to sit in the practice room and be able to say that or bring their son or daughter to that. And I think you've figured a lot of that out. And the statement you said about elite becomes an expectation, and I'm paraphrasing you, so if I say it wrong, I apologize, but that you were an environment where average was not going to be tolerated, starting at University of Iowa as an athlete, and then as a coach, and then when you went to Grundy, or the other way to say it is your average is winning, like you have 5 rings plus 1 as an athlete, as a national champion individually, like that's the standard. And the same thing with all the high school state titles. And I mean, God only knows if you won state, how many individual champions you had, but my guess is 3 to 5 a year. So that's another, 35, 40 kids. So I'm assuming this is going to be like a curriculum. It's going to be on a website. It'll be some sort of subscription base, but people will be able to more or less invest in your knowledge and a program and be able to help grow what they love to do and use some of the skills and like you said, the wisdom that you're putting together.
Right. Yep. I think the platform will end up being a chance to hire me, whether it's for to come in or whether to do some, we're going to probably do a lot of Zoom teaching, a lot of classes. So I'm not interested in being a motivational speaker. I'm more interested in being a teacher. So I look forward to teaching principles, and I think there's certain principles that you got to have across the board. And fundraising is a piece of the puzzle at every college program. If you want to get an edge, even if you're a D2 or D3, I don't think any program out there, high school or any level of college, would turn down $100,000. And raising $100,000 is not that difficult. I mean, it's just a template. It's a system. It's a series. It's steps. And if you implement those steps, and it's stuff that I learned along the way. I didn't invent the wheel, but I found out how the wheel works and put my spin on it. And and it's worked for us. And so I'm not sitting here claiming to be an expert, but I did have to do a lot of things, not by choice, a lot of times to win that are valuable now in the current climate we live in. And, even when I was at Christiansburg High School, when I was at Grundy, we had an unlimited budget. We had one or two guys that wrote checks every month. And so we had an unlimited budget, basically.
Yeah.
When I got to Christiansburg, we had no money, zero. My balance, my athletic balance at the high school was $300 a year. Right? We'd spend that in a minute in Grundy. So I had to figure out how can we raise, we need over $100,000 a year to make this baby roll. That was back in the late 90s. And so whether people want to admit or not, it does take money to get resources to win sometimes.
I think almost every time.
And we see this a lot, obviously we're seeing a lot in college sports, but even in high school sports, think if I had another $100,000 in my athletic budget, what could I do? What could we do with that to make our program better? So again, that's just one component of it, but I look forward to it. I'm not very good at sitting around doing nothing. My only hobby is golfing, and now I'm into boating. So I got two really high stress hobbies, but I'm not very good at sitting around. So I like to be involved, and I like to be around sports people.
Yeah, I think what you're doing will fill a niche, and it'll create you have a great coaching tree. You have all these athletes that have succeeded under your tutelage. And I think you'll create an even bigger legacy because there'll be some school in Virginia or North Carolina or Arizona or wherever, Missouri, that, got into your program and built it. And confidence is the chicken and the egg, right? Like I think some people just need somebody to tell them you can do it. I talked to somebody this morning and they're working on a project and they got a small win. And I'm like, you did it. Congratulations. I'm not sure you thought you could do it, but you did it. Keep going. And when somebody who's done it says you're doing a good job, that's what every athlete wants from their coach. Like at the beginning, like where you can put your arm around a kid and like you said, you're a stud, go out there and be a stud. But you won a national title, and you won a team title as an athlete and a ton of trophies as a coach. That's different than some guy that just fell off the back of the turnip truck, saying you can do it. Or it's kind of like when your mom says you look nice, like they have to say you look nice. Somebody else says it, it's a little different. So when the website is built and everything else, we should have you back on and, we can talk about it and some of the specifics and how people reach out to you and everything. I think just my 2 cents worth, but I think building systems and templates are critical to success. Some of the success I've had in the business world and such. And I think a lot of it isn't wrestling specific. Like somebody wants to support soccer or volleyball or field hockey or, any other sport as much, people in wrestling are passionate, but there's people, every year I go to the Beat the Streets Gala and there's where I stay is where there's this massive volleyball tournament. And you see moms and dads that have scraped their last nickel together to put their daughter in that tournament in hopes of getting a scholarship or hoping the character development that happens from being in sports. So I don't think that stuff is unique to wrestling. I think that's sort of universal to, good parents and the value of sports.
No, building something, building anything elite it's the same principles if you're trying to run a multi-million-dollar car business or a wrestling team or, anything. I think that's what I've learned over the years is you have to go through the same steps. Everybody's starting point might be different. You got some kid that wants to be an NCAA champ, and then you got some guy, 35-year-old guy that wants to sell more cars than anybody in the state of Florida. It's you got a goal. How do you get to that end goal? The steps are very, very similar. They're very similar. You have to go through the same process. You got to have the same kind of plan. Obviously, the details in there are different, but you still got to go win, and you still got to go lose in that process, and you got to realize how to lose and how losing's good for you. And it's a process.
And I think you got to have grit, right? Like you can teach everybody all these skills. Like I just decided this year I wanted to lose weight, and I'm down 34 pounds since January. And the only difference is like I didn't reward myself with food, and I got out and worked out. And, it's like I could have done it 5 years ago. I mean, like there was nothing stopping me except I just wasn't as mentally tough as I was being this year. So, I mean, if you don't have grit.
No, I think that, so I always share I get this job over the years, especially even when I started at Virginia Tech, you get the opportunity to speak in front of a lot of different groups, college groups, business groups, athletic teams, you get to do all of that. And so over the years, I'm like, man, I got to have something to say because I get asked to speak at all these things. So years ago, I put 5 principles to be elite together. And what you just said, that's my number 4 is you got to be extremely tough. And, you said gritty, but it's not, how many push-ups, how many squats, how much I can bench. It's how do you deal with the hard things? How do you deal with getting beat off the team multiple years in a row? How do you deal with losing, in this day and age where the minute you lose, if you're a big name, all you got to do is go to the locker room and pick up your phone. And, there's 20 pictures of you losing.
Yeah.
That's a skill set. That
the meme with the girl pointing at you.
Yeah. If you don't talk to your athletes about that and how to deal with that, that can really mess with their head. So there's just a lot of toughness that requires to do anything that's really, really elite. Like if you're going to get in that small percentage, like I said, 80 All-Americans a year at the Division I level out of 350,000 high school wrestlers, you are at a very, very elite level. Those guys they did a lot of hard things and went through a lot more crap than everybody else, truth be told.
Yeah, it's 0.000228. So if you move the decimal over, it's 2/100ths of 1%.
Yeah, that's elite.
That's anytime we're trying to figure out the zeros,
they're
really rich or it's really hard to do. Which way the decimal point is moving.
Yeah.
So, well, Coach, I've enjoyed it. I always enjoy talking to you, and I should say this on the air. You treat everybody well. Like in the beginning, years ago, I kind of thought it was salesy. I just kind of thought like you were just nice to everybody. But if you're good at it, I think it feels sincere. Like you're always kind. Like when I see you at the meets or whatever, you stop, you shake hands, not even if it's a walk by, it's a nod. And I don't know if enough people tell you that, but it does matter to people. It does matter to people. And I think it's a good lesson, if nothing else. Like we're all in that role to be that person that gives a nod or gives a handshake to somebody. And so I really appreciate it. I appreciate how you've treated me over the years and your willingness to come on and your willingness to be transparent, even if it's not always fun. So I would wish you luck on these 2 new gigs, but I think the hay is in the barn. I think you'll kill it. But I would like to, if I can, help publicize the new thing once you're up and running. We'd love to have you back on.
Yeah, maybe we get together next, hopefully we'll be up and running by next year at this time. So it's just pecking away at it right now, but we'll have some hopefully more solid stuff in 9 to 12 months.
Well, whenever you're ready to go, you just let me know and we'll get you on. And I'm sure I'll be up in Ames this year for a meet. So
yes, come see it.
Maybe it'd be easier to grab a meal now that you're not coaching.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. That's still the coach, Kevin Dresser, the director of wrestling. I'm David Mirikitani. Thank you guys for watching and listening.
Thanks, David.